Webinars are hot. As a content marketing professional, I've produced hundreds of videos for social and traditional media platforms and currently work with one of the largest podcast networks in the country. So for me, understanding how webinars work in the B2B space is both essential to my professional development and an exciting form of content creation. According to a study commissioned by digital agency Demandwave, 41% of B2B marketers cite webinars as the best marketing tactic for driving revenue. I've set out to discuss webinars with one of the foremost experts in the field, Matt Lay, president of the Streaming Network in Toronto. Together, we've created this multi-part series of videos and podcasts, the webinar Lessons from the Front Line, or How I Learned to Live with Never Getting a Second Chance with Live Virtual Events. Welcome back to the webinar, Lessons from the Front Line. With me, as usual, is Matthew Lay, president of the Streaming Network, Canada's top webinar service provider. The legal sector seems to march to the beat of its own drummer, preferring to do most, if not all, business in person. This seems to be in proud defiance of what is going on with the rest of the business community. And the evidence suggests that they are doing just fine without webinars, at least if you ask partners in law firms that do not do webinars. But lately, things have begun to shift. Legal webinars are on the rise across North America. Matt Lay, welcome back.
Thank you, Pete.
So what's the difference about law firms than other professional services that you work with?
Well, you know what? One thing off the top, you had said that these lawyers will say that everything's fine, but that is actually not true, and probably one of the reasons why webinars are on the rise. Most law firms consider flat revenue to be growth in this day and age. They're having troubles continuing without acquisition to continue to grow, so it is one of the reasons. But there's a couple things that are very different about the legal profession or the way law firms are set up that make them different. One of which is that in a law firm, the customer is used to and wants to be courted by the lawyer. And then on the flip side, lawyers don't want to beg for business or ask for business. And so you, in a conventional organization like mine, you host a webinar and the sales reps cannot wait to get the leads. They cannot wait to follow up with people. We actually have to hold back those tier 2 and tier 3 leads and let marketing do their thing, so we're not calling people too early in their buyer's journey. But at law firms, you can't get anyone to call them. The people who want to call them, the business development specialist, part of the marketing department, no one wants to hear from them. And so for a while, the webinar was looked at this thing that they had to do because they weren't getting as many bums in seats or they wanted to reach a new audience, but not really a tool that drove revenue or got ROI. A few things have changed beyond the fact that they need to find new ways of driving revenue. We've seen, law firms change their focus, saying we gotta do something different. And so we have to change the way we look at our buyer, bring in marketers from other sectors, and a lot of times they do actually come from accounting, a similar setup, partner environment, much more progressive in the use of webinars and really a lot of marketing techniques. And a few years ago, PD changed, and law firms started didn't have to, but were able to offer a lot more PD to their customer, the corporate counsel at big companies like the banks. And when that happened, they started investing a little bit more in webinars itself.
You brought up accounting firms, and obviously there's differences, but there's also things that you can compare. So they enjoy when they do webinars, they enjoy many of the same sorts of benefits that other professional services enjoy. Yes. Let's dive into that a little bit. How do law firms compare?
Well, law firms, you bring up other professional services, and our last podcast on financial services, very similar. A lot of what they do is based around professional development. Lawyers, whether you like them or you don't, have a lot to offer in the way of thought leadership or education. They can inform not just other lawyers on the impact of certain legalities, but accountants and HR professionals. And so they're often called upon to be the person to help, translate what's going on in laws in this country. And so as a result, they get to offer PD in a lot of different ways. And PD is a big hook for people to come to events, and it's a big hook for people to come to webinars. And so they're similar in that regard. Another thing that's similar about them is, as much as they are slow followers, and I'll talk a lot today about, how far they've come, but still how far they need to go as it relates to webinars, we are seeing that their technology is moving away from just using legal tools, legal CRMs, legal marketing automation, legal this, legal that, to more standardized technology that plays well with other marketing tech, like our webinar platform or webinars in general. But the really interesting thing is, if you go back to the viewership, is legal webinars, if someone shows up, they generally stay just as long as anyone else, so they're at or above that 55-minute live viewership number. For on-demand, they've always been above the norm as far as how long people will attend. And their conversion rates from registrant to viewer are higher than most any other segment that we deal with. So although we maybe don't see as much action in legal webinars as we do in financial services or accounting, they have a lot of aspects of the programs that we do see are stronger than the average webinar in either of those other sectors.
But obviously there's challenges. They face challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges that law firms face in this area?
A lot of them are financial, or maybe not financial, but I guess it's the value that the value people put on the programs. So in most law firms, you'll deal with a small cross-functional marketing team. The same people sending emails, doing webinars, hosting in-person events. Some of the larger Seven Sisters firms will have events groups, marketing groups, and sort of PD groups. But you go below that, and they have to do a lot. And even in the Seven Sisters firms, I don't want to upset any of our customers here. Everyone has to do. They have to do a lot as well. So they got small teams, and then when it comes to, purchasing technology, if you will, for things like webinars, because they have not seen ROI, and there's so many reasons for that. We talked about the difference in the way that a new customer comes to a firm in a law firm versus a conventional B2B business, but also because they haven't had the data or the analytics or the information for it. It's hard for a lot of marketers or event teams in the legal profession to get budget to do a webinar program right.
Right.
They have partners, and it's their money. Every dollar that goes into a marketing thing comes out of a partner's pocket. They're all contributing to this, or practice group leaders contributing to it. And so if you can't show them that straight line to how it's going to impact them, it's harder. It's oftentimes not a centralized buyer making that decision. And so with all those things working against them, even some of the firms that were early adopters are struggling to expand, kind of their programs.
Right.
Those challenges are things that I've seen for 10 years. I'm starting to see a change based around necessity. We have to do something different. We have to compete with these guys over here. And as such, they are growing, but they got a long ways to go.
Right. There's, I guess, a lot of, just with all these other businesses, you've got the consumer is really doing all the internet research.
Yeah.
They're doing all that sort of stuff ahead of time. And these are exactly the sorts of challenges that all these other sectors face as well, that all the research is done before they ever engage.
No. So my understanding is that it's a little different than that.
Right.
I'm hearing the number one way that firms get new clients is through the referral basis. And the reason that top firms are investing in content and webinars and putting all of this out there is to show the value that they bring to a prospective new customer. So I refer you to my lawyer, and you go there, and you're having a problem with, I don't know, the Panama Papers, you got money overseas or something like that, and you're trying to figure it out, and you go there, and there's these great articles or this webinar that explains what's going on, and you're like, oh, if only my lawyer had told me that, I would do it. But in saying that, what's funny is that the number one place that I find law firms find their webinar, virtual event, webcasting partner from is not from doing research, but from other people in legal marketing.
Right.
So they talk to each other, and as how we've gotten a lot of our customers. We do stuff like this or whatever. We get some leads this way, but really it's them talking to each other and then sort of giving a call. There are another one of these industries, not unlike I was mentioning in financial services, where they happen to look inward a lot, rather outward, and there's a lot of movement between the firms, which can be a barrier to progress, change, and innovation.
Interesting. I guess that also speaks then again to once you get a client, there's a lot of loyalty there
Yes.
as well,
Yep.
which is probably a big part of it. Obviously, you're making a big push right now. How has TSN's approach changed in the last 12 months towards the sector?
I think what we've done in general, and this might sound a little harsh, is we're the Canada's largest provider of these services. We talk to law firms all the time. We've just decided that we are recognizing when it's right to talk to us and when it's not. So if you're looking, to get into a webinar program and we hear from you when we start talking about what's important to you, and nothing that's important to you makes sense to us in that, you're not looking at data doesn't matter, this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, you're probably not the right customer for us. And so we've done the walk away, but we've really invested in those firms that are focusing on what we think to be the right things. So they're focusing on the data and integration. They're trying to find ways of improving the experience of their customers so it's easier for them to access their content. They're trying to transform what has been typically everything done this way, and they're trying to break that nasty habit of we've always done it this way, so this is the way we're going to do it now, and move the organization forward. When we find a law firm like that, we throw a lot of resources at it, not just sales resources. We want to go out and we want to help these firms become the beacon of what can be done. Because interestingly, when we first started talking about engagement scoring or profiling the top 5 or 10 or 20 or 100 viewers, whatever it might be, and everything that we've now effectively applied to the conventional B2B space, initially when this started being built and we started launching it, I was most excited about law firms. Because we knew the lawyer there was no mechanism by which to follow up with the 250 or so viewers they got and try and convert that to revenue. But the lawyer, if you could pick out those 5 people that were so focused on the topic of the Panama Papers, they asked 5 questions, they downloaded 6 resources, that they would actually pick up the phone or at minimum send an email and start an engagement with them. And we know from experience that you get a practice group leader who gets a call after a webinar and picks up a significant customer. It was the case for one of our first customers, their first webinar. They got a bunch of business from Walmart in Canada, and it just spreads like wildfire. This is a magic. It will get you customers like other programs won't. And so I was so excited about that. It didn't really resonate as well as I had hoped. And so when we see someone who it does resonate for and we get excited, we will go in and we will invest a lot of energy into those programs to get them going and off the ground.
Right. Let's talk a little bit. We talked when we were talking financial services about the continuing education.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that and how does that apply in this with this sector?
So they call it PD, but so many things are similar, yet so many things are different about it. But so they call it professional development. And that's because the primary buyer of legal services is corporate counsel when you're in that B2B space. So they offer continuing legal education out to their customers. In many cases, they're in hidden programs, meaning that they're only for customers. And so they'll do it for a select group of people as a value for being part of the firm. But they also have to service the 200, 110, 50,000 lawyers that they employ because everyone needs those credits now. And so they'll have these robust PD departments so they don't have to pay for external training or external credits, and they'll be delivering these programs. So as much as they're similar to financial services, they actually have more that they need to do than financial services from a PD perspective.
Right.
But they treat internal and external completely different. And as such, you'll have one firm that I'm talking to right now has a very robust internal way of tracking everything they do for the internal folks. But for the externals, they have nothing because they can't convert that. And so the PD team has nothing going with the external, even though that's becoming an increasingly large part of their overall PD program. Or they will put all this effort into the external in most cases and have these really great assets that are there for them. And then on the internal, they'll do things that are really, really like subpar because it's only our internal side. And almost every place we go, they're on different platforms. Right? We'll go in and we'll work with the marketers and we'll find out that PD is doing something different. And so CE Central, built for financial services, answers that problem for the law firms as well, a centralized place that houses data on accreditation for in-person, third party, and our application, making sure that PD department can easily sort of run reports on who's been accredited and who hasn't, and improve the experience of their customers because they know they can go and get that credit information. Even if legal is not the same as financial services, where they don't maybe have to report as often about it, it's still a service that that is valuable to them and fixes a lot of problems.
That's great. So we've talked about a lot of things,
Yeah.
but the one thing we actually haven't talked about is, what a good, strong legal webinar looks like. So let's dive into that a bit. What are we looking at here?
So a strong legal webinar program has a current and reliable PD element to it. So if laws are being augmented or changed, things are coming up. They are constantly delivering content that's new and on point with the current case law. Castle's always been a great drawer for webinars. Just because you did one 4 years ago and it got a lot of views doesn't mean it's even current anymore, or 3 years ago, or even a year ago. Laws change, the world changes, and so you want to be current with that program, and people need to be able to depend on you that when something is going to change, they can come to you for it, or else they will go somewhere else. And from a thought leadership perspective, or what we would consider traditional webinars that may be out there trying to bring in new customers to the firm or whatever it is that they're purposeful. So, we've been saying this, we've seen it, and the firms that are doing well are doing it, is if you're looking to attract cross-border business, people moving into Canada, you might have to fly down and see them, or they might fly up to see you. That's a big investment and a lot going on. Hosting webinars lets you get into that business, let them see and hear from your thought leaders, your partners, the guys that are going to be working with them. It might be a situation where you're really strong in one or two practice groups and you have emerging sectors in other ones. Or you're strong in Alberta and energy, not so strong in Toronto, that you do a webinar on energy from this practice group leader and target your Toronto audience, who's not going to go out there to meet that guy in person like you want him to, and he only comes to Toronto when he has to because he loves living in Alberta or whatever the story is. And so these purposeful programs that fill gaps and just help you cross-pollinate within your client base or attract new customers that you couldn't reach by shaking hands and being in the room, those programs are always the ones that get the highest return on investment. And then the last thing that I would say is if you go to a firm, there's a lot of firms out there that hide almost their entire program. It's behind closed doors and it's exclusive content for their customers. And while I fully understand the aspect of exclusive content, there should also be content that is not. No one out there is going to know how awesome you are or your perspective if you hide it from the world. And there are programs out there that are completely hidden right now. I still don't understand it, and it can't be explained to me in a way that makes sense. And so the strong programs, the ones that are getting the most out of it, both for their customers and for the business, and definitely the ones who I know are getting the highest ROI because they're the ones that are continuing to book more, have a massive public face for their webinar programs.
It's interesting. You mentioned, one of the things you mentioned was current and nimble, and I know, things are constantly changing. Technology is constantly changing.
Yeah.
They have to stay up to date.
Yeah.
In the last 12 months, what are sort of the biggest advancements you've seen as related to this sector?
Well, I've started to see a movement away from, there's been, law firms didn't use CRMs. They used practice management software, which was basically a CRM with another layer in it. There was one company out there, LexisNexis, that owned the market. Because they owned the market, because they had the data that fed into it, the case law data, the product became old, it was a little bit closed up, and it was, and basically, limited what they could do from a technology perspective. So LexisNexis knew that this change was coming. They bought a company called Future or launched a product. I forget what happened, but basically had a marketing automation tool, started getting some sort of connectors, and then started opening themselves up, which was nice. Now law firms could start looking at other technologies. And what most exciting recently is just, seeing people buck the conventional legal technology space and looking out at what everyone else is doing and saying, hey, when I was at Deloitte, I was on Salesforce and that worked really well. I'm going to try and bring that into a law firm, and we're seeing that right now. It's not just Salesforce. It's called One Place. It's got a different skin on it, but still. So that technology is changing and is advancing. And also, I mean, like every business we talk to, the buyer demo is changing, as is the thought leader demo. It's not just the older lawyers who are thought leaders in certain subjects. It's younger ones, and as that occurs, we're seeing a lot of firms starting to take chances that we wouldn't expect. In some cases, too many chances, but that it is new. So there is change on the horizon, even with all the barriers that are in place, and I think it's being driven by, in many cases, the technological transformation occurring within the firm that is long overdue, and will allow for them to take advantage of a tool like a webinar. I know I've been going on, but let me just say this. In the past, with the type of tool products that they use due to budget constrictions, due to the access of information into their CRM, many people I would talk to would literally run a webinar, not know who attended it for 2 or 3 days, and not even inform the CRM or the practice management software that it happened because they didn't care. They just stored it somewhere and they just knew. What a traditional marketer knows is that, although the webinar generally doesn't sell you anything, you get those couple guys that reach out and then you get quick revenue, but really it's just part of the story, is that with a properly integrated program into these various aspects, the marketer can start to see the likelihood of someone who isn't a customer becoming a customer, or the likelihood of a customer spending more money with the firm based around how many webinars that they view, or based around the interaction within the webinar. They can start automating those responses and those call to actions that we know the lawyer won't do because they'll have the data and the information in the right place. They'll know if there's four people, 4 different aspects of a company, watching webinars on a similar subject. They'll be able to aggregate that quickly and know something's going on that they're looking at us for this. And so, with this change in technology, when done right, the marketer themselves can have such a greater impact on the firm's overall revenue, like we saw in the birth of the VP of marketing in technology and in all these other places where they got more budget than IT does now for technology. Well, it's certainly not the case in legal. And when they can see that and they can transform viewers to dollars, I think that is going to be the most exciting time for legal marketers. They've probably been waiting for it for a long time too.
When you talk about the ability to sort of track that sort of stuff, that doesn't apply to every platform though, right? There's probably a lot of legal people listening to this sort of going, oh, that's interesting.
Well, that's because, there's a lot, we're the best. We track the most data. You know that. I say that all the time, and it is true. We're also not the cheapest.
Yeah.
And go back to what I said before. You go out and you buy, a live video webcast from a company that has 5 employees. We see this all the time at some of the largest firms. And you're running on a platform that doesn't have a name. It's not backed by, Cisco or in our case, On24. And you're not going to get that kind of data. You're not going to get reliable data. You're not going to get that data at all. But you're paying $3,000 for what we charge maybe $10,000 for. It's a stark difference. And often when we see that, we walk in and we got to understand what's driving things, again, about picking the right firms, because we got to say, look, I'm going to tell you that we are at least 3 times more than what you're being charged right now. There is a lot of legal marketers out there saying we don't have anywhere near that amount of information. We can't tell who's engaged, who's not. We can't get that into our CRM. It's all a pain.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that goes back to this idea that it's not a technology that people want to invest in. But it's driven the other way, right? As CRMs and marketing automation tools got more powerful, then the data from our webinar tool was more easily actioned, right? You couldn't always action it just by a human. There was whatever, so you had to have that. And so as they go down that road, they'll see it as well. We know it's coming. We see it at some of the firms.
Right. And I guess it all boils down to how committed you are to growing your business. And clients come and go.
I watched that that term because a lot of legal marketers, they are committed.
Yeah.
Right? They're just spending their money. They have limited budgets and they're spending it on things they know work.
Right.
But in the background, IT's changing infrastructure, websites are becoming updated, there's things that are happening, and as that happens, then I think what they'll see is that it'll make more sense to spend that $10,000 on a webinar or program or whatever with us than it would be with the other guy, even though it's cheaper, because of that data flow.
Right.
It's going to switch for them.
It's interesting to me. We're nearing the end, but one of the things I do want to ask you about is, a lot of the clients, you imagine that they're much sort of the bigger clients.
Yeah.
They're employing this kind of technology because they do have the resources and they do have the people around them. A lot of lawyers are busy, right? They spend all their time doing what they do, and dealing with this stuff is much more difficult. And in your mind, is there sort of the larger, medium-sized, small law firms, like where is there a cutoff, or is this something that's good for all?
I'll say one thing that doesn't change from the large to the small is a want to expand your business, but again, a budget constraint or a lack of value on some of the things that we do. And it's because, again, it all goes back to the same thing. It comes out of someone's pocket. But I'll give you an example from accounting, which just shows that I guess accountants are better at counting money and profit than lawyers are in some cases. Is we work with a small accounting firm. I don't want to say the name. I don't want to call him too small, but I mean it's him, and he has people that work there. But he is the face of the business, and he is the accountant. And so he comes into this studio and he buys the most expensive package that a single kind of, the most expensive package you can buy, basically. He's coming in full day in studio, multiple cameras. He uses a third-party host. He has a external marketing company work with him on content and distribution. And he loves coming in and cutting checks on that. And the only thing that limits him from doing it more is his own time, because he's got to go out there and actually do the counting, right? But, I was in here with him and I said, I got to ask, because, we see this all, we see the struggle that we have in all these places. He's like, Matt, I get one customer from this, one. And that pays for, my whole year of this program. But I get two, and I'm laughing. They stay with me for 5 years. That's it. Like, this is whatever. He goes, I got 5 the first time. And that guy only had 25 viewers. 25 viewers on his first webcast. Wow. And he was a small one-man accounting shop. I knew what he paid. And I remember saying to the sales rep, I'm going to go down and talk to him and see if there's anything we can do, because there's no way 25 is going to get him his ROI. And he was begging to come back.
Wow.
And so he, maybe because he was so small, was able to more clearly see the delineation between viewership and that revenue. Accountants have not been shy about picking up the phone like lawyers have. But I would say that anyone the real cutoff for law firms is their areas of practice. If you are a local, if your shtick is we are the best in Markham, then webinars probably aren't the best for you. If your shtick is that you are the best IP firm in the country, and regardless of the fact that you only have lawyers in Toronto, you really are better than everyone else, you should be doing webinars all the time.
Right.
So I can't say that it's a head count of lawyers. I can't say that it's anyone. But if you're in the latter, if you are someone who does business nationally but is located locally, and you're already committed to events, then you're going to see the fastest road to ROI, because the minute you add a virtual element to that same event, your lawyer doesn't have to do anything more. He's still doing the presentation he was going to do for the 25, 30, 40 people you have in your office. But you expand that out to a virtual audience, you're going to get tenfold, probably, especially if you really are the best in the country at it.
Amazing. It's a great story. So let's start to wind things down. There are those that say they're too busy. There are those that say webinars don't work in legal. What's your response to that? What's your response to the person who just says this isn't for my business?
Gotta say that they're wrong. We see it everywhere we go, that they are getting them in front of more eyeballs, whether it be servicing their customers with their PE program or driving more revenue, more opportunity, more awareness for their firm. Everyone who's doing them will say that. I think that the people who say that webinars don't work in legal mean that they can't put their finger on that webinar that got them that customer. And that is not a function of webinars not working. It's a function of them not being able to connect those lines because they don't have the right data going to the right places. That's the only answer that you have. And because maybe the initial time that person came was through a referral, and then they watched a webinar, and then they spoke to a lawyer, it never gets back to marketing or anyone that was part of what got them there, right? And so it works. We know it works. Talk to your friends at other firms. They'll tell you that generally it works. It doesn't work if you just do one a year and expect it to change the world, but if you have a program going, it works. And if you just feel like it didn't work at your firm, focus on how to get that data connecting so that you can know where you're getting that ROI. And once you do that, you will become a believer.
Right. Excellent. All right, it's time for our moment of Zen.
Okay.
We're going to borrow some legal parlance here. You take the stand. You're given 1 minute to address the court.
Yes.
What do you say about webinars?
I say that, when a partner in your firm gets that call, and they get that call from someone who went cheap with their legal services and are now in trouble, that's the call I get most often from legal marketers, is that they went with what they thought they could afford, they went with what was cheapest or whatever it was, and then eventually when we get the call, it's because it didn't work, it broke, they got egg on their face, or they made it work, and now they got so much work they have to do just to make it happen every time. It's a full-time job, and the average legal marketer, I looked it up, makes $60,000 in downtown Toronto. And if they're the ones who are responding to support emails, that doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if that's a minute or not, but I would say if you're not ready to talk, I am looking forward to your call when the time is right.
Right. Excellent. So we'll be back with Life Sciences.
Yes.
As usual, it'll be the two of us sitting here in my mom's basement, enjoying a lovely time chatting about webinars.
Yeah, what I love what you did about these first three is like every single one of them from the outside can be like if you had like a one-page PDF, it would seem exactly the same, but they're so different on the inside.
Yeah. Well, that's all successful shows have a format.
There you go.
So, Matt, thank you again.
Thanks, Pete.
And we'll see you again.
Thank you.